The helicopter blades cut through the African sky like thunder itself. Below, 3 battle-scarred dogs limped across the red earth, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. A man cradled his 12-year-old daughter against his chest, alive, breathing, but forever changed. The girl's eyes held secrets that no child should ever possess. This is Ángel Martinez from Seville, Spain. 48 hours ago, he was nobody. Today, he's the man who walked through hell with 3 war dogs and came back with a miracle. The savanna behind them still burns from the ritual fire that saved their lives. Brutus, the massive Presa Canario, can barely stand. His right leg drags behind him, a trophy from his battle with creatures that shouldn't exist in our world. But how did a Spanish father end up in the heart of Zimbabwe's wilderness, fighting supernatural beasts with nothing but 3 dogs and a father's desperate love? How did his 12-year-old daughter Clara survive 3 weeks alone in a land where lions hunt and hyenas laugh at death itself? The answer will break your heart and restore your faith in human determination. Because this isn't just a story about a lost child. This is about what happens when love becomes stronger than fear, when ordinary men become legends, and when 3 dogs become the difference between life and death in the most dangerous place on earth. But to understand how this miracle happened, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to a school trip that went horribly wrong. Back to authorities that failed. Back to the moment when a father decided that nothing, not governments, not distance, not death itself, would stop him from bringing his daughter home. Before we dive into this incredible journey, I need you to do something. In the comments below, tell me what country you're watching from. I want to know how far this story of love and determination has traveled. And if you believe that some bonds are stronger than any force on earth, hit that subscribe button for Wind Echo Untold, because stories like this one deserve to be heard around the world. Ángel Martinez was never meant to be a hero. At 43, he ran a small construction company in the narrow streets of Seville's old quarter. His hands were calloused from concrete and steel, his back ached from years of honest labor, and his greatest pride wasn't the buildings he'd constructed. It was the 12-year-old girl who greeted him every evening with a smile that could light up the darkest day. Clara was everything to him. After her mother died in a car accident when Clara was 7, Ángel had rebuilt his entire world around his daughter. They were inseparable, 2 souls sharing the same heartbeat. She inherited her mother's laugh, but her father's stubborn determination. When Clara set her mind to something, nothing could stop her. It was a trait that would soon save her life. But Ángel wasn't alone in raising Clara. He had 3 companions that most people crossed the street to avoid. Brutus, a Presa Canario weighing nearly 130 pounds, was a mountain of muscle and loyalty. His massive head could crush bone, but he was gentle as a lamb with Clara. León, the Dogo Argentino, was silent, death incarnate, a hunter bred to take down wild boar, but who slept at Clara's feet every night. And Nero, the Cane Corso, was Ángel's early warning system, alert to every sound, every stranger, every potential threat. These weren't pets. They were family. And in the streets of Seville, everyone knew that Ángel Martinez and his 3 dogs were not to be trifled with. But none of that reputation mattered when Clara didn't come home from her school trip to Zimbabwe. Ángel lived a simple life. He woke up at dawn, worked with his hands, came home to Clara's homework and laughter, and fell asleep knowing his world was complete. He wasn't rich, but he was content. He wasn't famous, but he was loved. He had no idea that within days, he would abandon everything, his business, his home, his entire life, to embark on a journey that would test every fiber of his being. The 3 dogs sensed something was wrong before Ángel did. In the days before Clara's departure, they became restless, protective, constantly checking her room. León, who rarely showed emotion, would rest his massive head on her lap for hours. Brutus, normally playful, became serious and watchful. And Nero started following her everywhere, his intelligent eyes scanning for invisible threats. Clara was excited about the trip. It was her first time leaving Europe, her first real adventure. She packed her small suitcase with the care of an explorer, including the plastic pendant Ángel had given her, a cheap trinket from a gas station, but her most treasured possession because it came from him. She wore the pink ribbon in her hair that her mother had loved, and she promised Ángel she would write in her diary every day. "Don't worry, Papa," she had said, standing on her tiptoes to hug him goodbye. "I'll be back before you know it. And I'll have so many stories to tell you and the boys. That's what she called Brutus, León, and Nero, her three giant protectors who would have followed her to Zimbabwe if they could. If only Ángel had listened to that instinct. If only he had known that sometimes a father's paranoia is really divine warning in disguise. The phone call came at 3 in the morning, 16 days into Clara's trip. Ángel jerked awake to the sound that every parent dreads, the international ring that means something has gone terribly wrong. The three dogs were already awake, standing at attention as if they'd been expecting this moment. Mr. Martinez. The voice was thin, distant, filtered through a bad connection. "This is Elena Vasquez from the Spanish Embassy in Harare. I'm afraid there's been an incident with your daughter's school group." The world stopped. Angel's heart hammered so hard he thought it might burst. Brutus placed his massive head on Angel's lap, sensing the crisis before his master fully understood it. What kind of incident? Angel's voice was barely a whisper. The group was visiting the Hwange National Park. There was a miscommunication about the itinerary. Your daughter and 3 other students became separated from the main group during a nature walk. We've been searching for 3 days now. The local authorities are doing everything they can, but that single word contained all of Angel's worst nightmares. Where is she? His voice was steel now, cold and hard. "Mr. Martinez, I need you to understand the situation. This is a vast wilderness area. The search teams are professional, experienced. The Zimbabwean government has deployed helicopters, tracking dogs, local guides who know every inch of that terrain. We're coordinating with Spanish authorities to... Where is my daughter?" The silence stretched across continents. When the embassy official finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of defeat. "We don't know." 3 words that shattered Angel's universe. The other 3 children had been found within hours, scared but safe. Only Clara remained missing, lost in a landscape where lions hunted, where elephants charged, where hyenas laughed in the darkness, and death came in 1,000 different forms. The embassy promised updates. The school sent apologies. The insurance company discussed coverage. Everyone had procedures, protocols, proper channels. Everyone except Ángel. He hung up the phone and looked at his 3 dogs. They stared back at him with eyes that seemed to say, "We told you so, we knew. We felt it in our bones." For the next 6 hours, Ángel tried to do the reasonable thing. He called the embassy 17 times. He contacted the school, the tour company, the local police. He begged, he pleaded, he threatened. The answer was always the same. "We're doing everything we can. You have to trust the system." But the system was 3,000 miles away from his daughter. The system didn't love Clara Martinez. The system didn't know that she hummed her mother's favorite lullaby when she was scared, or that she was afraid of the dark, or that she trusted too easily and would follow anyone who seemed kind. The system had failed. At 9 in the morning, Ángel made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He looked at Brutus, León, and Nero, and he said the words that would take them all to hell and back. "We're going to bring her home." Not the authorities, not the professionals, not the system, them. A Spanish construction worker and 3 war dogs against the entire African continent. It was impossible. It was insane. It was exactly what Clara would have done if their roles were reversed. Within 6 hours, Ángel had sold everything he owned, booked 4 tickets to Morocco, the closest he could get his dogs to Zimbabwe without months of quarantine, and begun the journey that would either reunite his family or destroy them all. The hunt had begun. Morocco hit them like a physical blow. The heat, the noise, the chaos of a world completely alien to their Spanish existence. But Ángel had no time to adjust, no luxury of culture shock. Every hour Clara remained missing was an hour closer to losing her forever. The 3 dogs handled the transition better than their master. Brutus, with his primitive instincts, immediately understood they were in hunting territory. León became even more silent, his powerful frame coiled like a spring. Nero's eyes darted constantly, cataloging every scent, every sound, every potential threat or clue. Ángel had a plan, if you could call desperate hope a plan. He would drive south through Morocco, Algeria, through the Sahara Desert, through every country between him and Zimbabwe if necessary. The dogs would track Clara's scent when they got close enough. It was insane, impossible, and absolutely certain to fail, but it was all he had. The first week nearly broke them. The heat was merciless, turning their rented truck into a mobile oven. Water became precious, food secondary. At night, the temperature plummeted so drastically that Ángel and his 3 dogs huddled together for warmth, sharing body heat like a pack of wolves. Brutus lost 15 pounds in those first 7 days. León's usually pristine white coat became matted with dust and grime. Nero developed a limp from the rocky terrain, but none of them complained, none of them gave up. They sensed their alpha's determination and matched it with their own. On the 8th day, in a small oasis town whose name Ángel never learned, they got their first break. An old man sitting in the shade of a date palm tree looked at Ángel's photo of Clara and nodded slowly, the girl with the school bag. Yes, I remember. But that was many days ago. She was heading toward the river, toward the big trucks. Ángel's hands shook as he showed the photo to every person in the town. Most shook their heads, but 3 confirmed it. Clara had been there. She was alive, or had been alive 8 days ago. She was moving south, toward the river that marked the edge of true wilderness. The trail went cold for another week. They drove through landscapes that looked like the surface of Mars, sleeping under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. The dogs began to change, becoming leaner, harder, more feral with each passing day. This wasn't Spain anymore. This was survival territory. The turning point came in a village so small it didn't appear on any map. Ángel was showing Clara's photo to anyone who would look when a young boy, maybe 10 years old, grabbed his sleeve and pointed toward the horizon. The white girl, he said in broken English. She went that way, with the men in the green truck. Men in a green truck. Ángel's blood ran cold. Who were these men? Why had they taken Clara? Were they helping her, or... He couldn't finish the thought. The boy led them to the edge of the village, where tire tracks in the sand headed toward a range of rocky hills. The tracks were at least a week old, but they were something. A direction. Hope. That night, as they camped among the rocks, Brutus began to behave strangely. The massive dog kept sniffing the air, his body tense with expectation. León joined him. Both dogs focused on something Ángel couldn't detect. Then Nero started a low, continuous growl. "What is it, boys?" Ángel whispered. That's when he heard it. Faint but unmistakable. The sound of vehicles in the distance. And something else. Something that made his heart stop. A child crying. Ángel crept toward the sound, the 3 dogs flanking him like a military unit. Over a ridge he saw them. 3 trucks parked around a campfire. Armed men lounging in the light, and in the back of one truck, a small figure that might have been, but when the figure turned, it wasn't Clara. It was another child, a local boy, clearly being held against his will. Ángel was one man with 3 dogs against at least 8 armed traffickers. The smart thing would have been to retreat, to call for help, to go through proper channels. But Clara had been missing for 22 days now, and every minute mattered. The attack was swift and brutal. Ángel had trained his dogs for protection, but he'd never seen them in true combat. Brutus hit the camp like a landslide, his massive jaws clamping down on the first man's arm with a sound like breaking wood. León moved like a white ghost, taking down 2 men before they could draw their weapons. Nero protected Ángel's flank, his intelligent eyes tracking every threat. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, 5 traffickers were dead. 2 had fled into the night, and 1, the leader, was on his knees with Brutus's teeth at his throat. "The Spanish girl," Ángel said in Arabic, one of the few phrases he'd learned. "Where is she?" The man's eyes were wide with terror as he stared at the massive dog whose breath he could feel on his neck. "South," he gasped. "She went south, to the river people." We never touched her, I swear. She was protected. What did that mean? Angel tied up the surviving trafficker and freed the local boy, who ran into the darkness without a word of thanks. They took one of the trucks and continued south, following a trail that seemed to grow colder with each passing hour. 3 days later, in the ruins of an ancient settlement, they found Clara's backpack. Angel's hands shook as he opened it. Her diary was inside, water-damaged but readable. Her clothes, her toiletries, her precious plastic pendant. But Clara herself was nowhere to be found. The last entry in her diary was dated 10 days ago. The men in the green truck weren't bad. They were trying to help me get home. But something happened at the river. The local people said I couldn't cross. They said I belong to the land now. I don't understand what they mean, but I'm not scared anymore. The dreams are getting stronger. I can hear Mama calling me, and sometimes I see animals that talk to me. Papa, if you're reading this, don't worry about me. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Angel read the entry 17 times before the words sank in. Clara wasn't just lost. She had been taken by local people who believed she belonged to the land. What kind of cult or tribe would steal a 12-year-old girl? And what did she mean about dreams and talking animals? That night, as Angel stared into their campfire, Nero began acting strange again. The dog walked to the edge of their camp and sat perfectly still, staring into the darkness. Then León joined him. Then Brutus. All 3 dogs were staring in the same direction, their bodies rigid with attention. "What do you see, boys?" Angel whispered. That's when he noticed the drums, distant, rhythmic, hypnotic. The sound seemed to come from the earth itself, a heartbeat that matched his own pulse. The dogs didn't seem afraid. They seemed expectant. As the drumbeat continued through the night, Angel made a decision. He would abandon the truck. From here on, they would track Clara on foot, following paths that only the dogs could detect. They were close now. He could feel it in his bones. What he didn't know was that Clara could feel it too, and that she was no longer the same little girl who had left Seville 3 weeks ago. The landscape changed as they moved deeper into the interior. The rocky desert gave way to scrubland, then to something that looked almost like civilization, if civilization included thorn trees that seemed to watch them pass, and water holes that reflected images of things that weren't there. The dogs were changing too. Brutus had lost his playful nature entirely, becoming a focused predator whose eyes missed nothing. León, always silent, now moved like a wraith, his white coat helping him blend into the pale grass. Nero had developed an almost supernatural awareness, alerting Angel to dangers minutes before they became visible. On the 4th day of following Clara's trail, they found evidence that made Angel's blood run cold, claw marks on trees that were too high and too large to belong to any natural animal. Something was hunting in this territory, something that could reach 12 feet up a tree trunk, but they also found signs of Clara, a piece of her shirt caught on a thorn bush. Footprints in the mud by a waterhole, small prints, definitely human, definitely hers. She was alive. She was moving, and she wasn't alone. The footprints were accompanied by others, bare feet, adult-sized, moving in a formation that suggested military training or hunting pack behavior. That night, as they camped in a grove of fever trees, Angel heard something that nearly stopped his heart. A child laughing in the distance, not crying. Not screaming, laughing. The sound was pure joy, innocent and carefree. But it was coming from the deepest, darkest part of the wilderness at midnight. What kind of child laughed in a place like this? What kind of people would allow a child to be outside in predator territory after dark? Angel wanted to investigate, but the dogs refused to move. All 3 lay flat against the ground, their bodies pressed into the earth as if hiding from something in the sky. Their behavior was so unusual, so contrary to their protective instincts, that Angel decided to trust their judgment. He was right to wait. An hour later, shapes moved through the trees around their camp. Not human shapes, not animal shapes. Something in between, moving with purpose, but staying just beyond the range of Angel's vision. The dogs remained motionless, barely breathing, until the shapes passed. Whatever was out there, it was hunting. And Clara was somewhere in its territory. Dawn brought a discovery that changed everything. León, who had been scouting ahead, returned to camp with something in his mouth, a pink hair ribbon, the same one Clara had worn when she left for Zimbabwe. But this wasn't the clean, bright ribbon Angel remembered. This one was faded, stained, and tied with knots he didn't recognize. Complex patterns that looked almost ceremonial. Someone had been caring for Clara. Someone who knew how to work with natural dyes and traditional knotting techniques. Someone who lived in harmony with this harsh landscape instead of fighting against it. The trail became clearer now. Footprints led toward a series of rocky outcroppings that formed natural caves and shelters. The prints were still mixed. Clara's small feet alongside adult bare feet, moving at a steady pace that suggested cooperation rather than captivity. But there were other tracks too. Tracks that made Angel's construction worker hands tremble as he measured them against his palm. Paw prints. Massive ones. But not from any dog or wolf. These prints had claw marks that extended 4 inches beyond the pad. And they were everywhere, circling the human tracks, following the same path. Sometimes overlapping with them. Whatever was following Clara and her companions was huge, predatory, and unafraid of humans. The dogs were becoming increasingly agitated as they followed the trail. Brutus kept looking over his shoulder, his massive body tense with the expectation of attack. León's usual silence had become something deeper, not calm, but the focused quiet of a predator preparing for battle. Nero's alertness had shifted into hypervigilance, his eyes scanning the terrain constantly for threats. They were being hunted. Angel was sure of it now. Something was following them, staying just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. But what was it waiting for? Why hadn't it attacked already? The answer came at sunset, when they crested a hill and saw what lay beyond, a village. Not marked on any map, not connected to any road, built into the natural curves of the landscape as if it had grown there instead of being constructed. Smoke rose from cooking fires and the sound of human voices carried on the wind. And there, sitting by a river that ran through the center of the settlement, was a small figure with long dark hair. Clara, Angel's heart stopped, then exploded into a rhythm so fast he thought it might kill him. She was alive. She was safe. She was less than half a mile away, but between him and his daughter, the dogs had gone rigid with alarm. All three were staring at the tree line that surrounded the village, their hackles raised, low growls building in their throats. They weren't alone on this hill. Something else was watching the village, something that had been waiting for Angel to arrive. The final confrontation was about to begin. Angel's reunion with Clara would have to wait. The dog's behavior left no doubt. They were surrounded. Brutus's growl had become a continuous rumble, like distant thunder that promised a storm. León had dropped into a combat crouch, his powerful haunches coiled for explosive action. Nero's intelligent eyes were tracking multiple targets, his head swiveling between threats that Angel couldn't yet see. That's when the laughter started. Not human laughter, not animal sounds, something in between, a cackling, hysterical noise that seemed to come from the trees themselves. It was the sound of madness, of creatures that had lost any connection to natural order. The first pair of eyes appeared in the gathering dusk. Yellow, glowing, positioned 8 feet off the ground in the branches of an acacia tree. Then another pair, and another. They were surrounded by at least 15 creatures that moved through the canopy like primates, but laughed like hyenas. In the fading light, Angel caught glimpses of them, too large to be baboons, too agile to be anything that should exist. But these weren't the apex predators. These were just the scouts. The real threat announced itself with a roar that shook the ground beneath Angel's feet. From the deepest part of the forest came something that had no name in any zoology textbook. A sound that was part lion, part bear, part something older and more terrible than either. The dogs reacted as one. Brutus charged toward the sound, his massive frame crashing through the underbrush like a living battering ram. León flanked left, moving with the fluid grace of a born killer. Nero stayed close to Angel, his body a barrier between his master and whatever emerged from those trees. What came out of the forest was nightmare-made flesh. The alpha creature stood over 6 feet tall at the shoulder, its body a fusion of predatory perfection and unnatural mutation. Its hide was black as midnight, scarred from countless battles, and its eyes burned with intelligence that was almost human. This wasn't just an animal, this was a force of nature that had learned to hate. Brutus hit it like a freight train, his 130 pounds of muscle and bone colliding with the beast's massive frame. The sound of impact echoed across the valley like a gunshot. For a moment, the two titans were locked together, Brutus's jaws seeking the creature's throat, while its claws raked across the dog's flanks. Then the beast threw Brutus aside like a toy. The massive Presa Canario hit a tree trunk with a sickening crack and lay still. "Brutus!" Ángel screamed, but there was no time to check on his fallen companion. The creature was already turning toward him, its scarred muzzle pulling back to reveal teeth designed for ripping flesh from bone. León attacked from the side, his white form a blur of focused aggression. The Dogo Argentino had been bred to hunt wild boar and jaguars. This was exactly the kind of fight he was born for. His powerful jaws clamped down on the beast's rear leg, his entire body weight thrown into the bite. The creature howled in pain and fury, spinning to dislodge its attacker. But León held on, his grip unbreakable, his determination absolute. This was pack warfare now, and every second León could keep the beast distracted was a second Ángel could use to save his daughter. But the creature was smarter than any natural predator. Instead of trying to shake León loose, it rolled onto its side, using its massive weight to crush the dog against the rocky ground. Ángel heard León's ribs crack, heard the forced exhale as the air was driven from his lungs. Still, the Dogo Argentino didn't let go. Nero made his move. The Cane Corso had been watching, waiting, analyzing the beast's fighting patterns. Instead of attacking head-on like his packmates, he went for the creature's eyes, the one vulnerable spot on its armored hide. His claws raked across the monster's face, opening deep gashes that sent blood streaming into its eyes. Blinded and enraged, the beast released León and swatted at Nero, its massive paw connecting with the dog's shoulder and sending him tumbling across the clearing. 3 dogs down, the alpha predator barely wounded. Ángel had never felt so helpless in his life. He was watching his family, his 4-legged sons, being destroyed by something that shouldn't exist, and there was nothing he could do to help them. That's when he heard Clara's voice. "Papa." She was standing at the edge of the village, but she wasn't the same girl who had left Seville 4 weeks ago. She was thinner, tanned dark by the African sun, and her eyes held depths that no 12-year-old should possess. She wore clothes made from natural fibers. Her hair was braided with beads and feathers, and around her neck hung amulets that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. But it was still Clara, still his daughter. "Clara, stay back," Ángel shouted, but she was already moving, not toward him, toward the beast. What happened next would haunt Ángel for the rest of his life, and give him a faith in miracles he'd never possessed before. Clara walked directly to the creature that had just destroyed 3 of the most powerful fighting dogs in the world. She moved without fear, her small bare feet silent on the rocky ground. The beast turned toward her, its scarred muzzle still, dripping with León's blood, its eyes burning with predatory hunger. And then it lowered its massive head. Clara placed her small hand on the creature's forehead, and Ángel heard her speak in a language he didn't recognize, words that seemed older than human civilization, syllables that resonated with the rhythm of the earth itself. The beast's eyes closed, its breathing slowed. The tension in its massive frame melted away like ice in sunlight. "She is protected," said a voice behind Ángel. He spun to see an elderly African man emerging from the village, his weathered face calm despite the carnage around them. "The girl belongs to the land now. She speaks with the old voices." "What are you talking about?" Ángel demanded, his eyes never leaving Clara and the monster that could have killed her with a single swipe of its claws. "What have you done to my daughter?" "We have done nothing," the old man replied. The spirits chose her. She came to us broken, lost, crying for her family. But the dreams began that first night. The ancestors spoke to her in visions. They showed her the old ways, the connections that city people have forgotten. Angel watched in amazement as Clara continued to stroke the beast's head, murmuring in that ancient language. The creature's wounds were actually healing. The gashes Nero had opened closing before Angel's eyes. "This is impossible," Angel whispered. "Many things are impossible," the old man agreed, "until they happen." But the moment of peace was shattered by a sound that made Angel's blood freeze in his veins. From the forest came the howling of the pack, not the creature Clara was calming, but its family, its hunting partners, its children. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. The pack that emerged from the trees made the alpha creature look like a house pet. 7 more of the impossible beasts, each one scarred from territorial battles, each one carrying the accumulated hunger and rage of apex predators with no natural enemies. But Clara didn't retreat. Instead, she walked toward them with the same fearless determination Angel had seen her show when she decided to climb the tallest tree in their neighborhood park, or when she stood up to bullies twice her size at school. "Clara, no!" Angel screamed, but his daughter held up her hand, not to him, but to the approaching pack, and they stopped. The old man moved to Angel's side, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your daughter has been chosen as a bridge between the old world and the new. She can speak to the spirits that inhabit these forms, but the connection costs her." "What kind of cost?" Angel's voice was hoarse with fear. "She becomes part of their world, part of the land itself. If she uses this power to save you, she may not be able to return to the world she came from." Angel looked at Clara, really looked at her. He could see it now, the way the sunlight seemed to bend around her, the way small animals approached without fear, the way even the grass seemed greener where she walked. She was changing, transforming, into something more than human, but also something less. His daughter was becoming a myth. But myths don't have fathers who love them. Myths don't get to grow up and fall in love and have children of their own. Myths don't get to live. "Clara," Angel called, "whatever you're thinking, don't do it. We'll find another way." She turned toward him, and for a moment she was just his little girl again, scared, confused, needing her papa to make everything better. "There is no other way," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the stones themselves. "They're hungry, Papa. They've been hungry for so long, but I can feed them something better than flesh." She closed her eyes and began to sing. It was her mother's lullaby, the same song she'd hummed every night before bed since she was 3 years old. But now it carried power that made the very air shimmer with possibility. The pack stopped their advance, their massive heads tilting as if trying to understand a language they'd never heard but somehow recognized. The song grew stronger, pulling harmonies from the wind itself, from the rustle of leaves and the whisper of grass. And as Clara sang, the beasts began to change. Not their physical forms, those remained as terrible and magnificent as ever, but their eyes lost their hunger, their postures relaxed, their threatening growls became something almost like contentment. Clara was feeding them with music, with love, with the pure emotional resonance of a child who had never learned to doubt the impossible, but the effort was killing her. Angel could see his daughter growing paler with each note, her small frame trembling with exhaustion. The power she was channeling wasn't meant for human vessels. It was burning her up from the inside. "Enough!" Angel roared and ran toward his daughter. The pack leader, the scarred alpha that had nearly killed his dogs, stepped between Angel and Clara. But this time, there was no aggression in its posture. It looked at Angel with eyes that held ancient wisdom, and something that might have been compassion. Then it did something that defied every law of nature Angel had ever known. It spoke. Not in any human language, but Angel understood every word. The meaning bypassed his ears and went directly to his heart. "The child offers herself for your safety. Do you offer yourself for hers?" Angel didn't hesitate. "Yes, even knowing it may cost your life." Especially knowing that. The creature studied him for a long moment, then turned toward Clara. Her song was faltering now, her strength nearly spent. In minutes, she would collapse, and Angel knew instinctively that if she fell unconscious while channeling that much power, she would never wake up. "There is a third way," the beast said, "but it requires trust. From you, from the child, and from the 3 warriors who came with you." Angel looked back at his dogs. León was struggling to his feet, his ribs clearly broken, but his spirit unbroken. Nero was limping badly but alert, ready to fight again, if necessary. And Brutus was standing. The massive Presa Canario should have been dead. Angel had heard his ribs crack when he hit that tree. But somehow, impossibly, he was on his feet, his eyes burning with the same determination that had brought them across continents and deserts to find Clara. "What kind of third way?" Angel asked. "Blood shared is bond forged. If you and your pack accept our mark, you become part of the land, like the child. Not changed as much as she, but changed enough. You could take her home, but home would no longer be the same for any of you." Angel looked at Clara, still singing her mother's lullaby, still pouring her life force into calming creatures that existed beyond the edge of reason. He looked at his 3 dogs, battered but unbroken, ready to follow him into whatever came next. He thought about his quiet life in Seville, his construction business, the simple pleasures of beer and television and normalcy. All of that would be gone if he accepted the creature's offer. He would be forever changed, forever marked by magic that the rational world would never understand. But Clara would live. Clara would come home. "Do it," he said. What followed was a ritual older than recorded history. The pack surrounded Angel and his 3 dogs, their massive forms creating a circle that seemed to pulse with otherworldly energy. The old man from the village approached, carrying a bowl filled with red powder that seemed to glow with its own inner light. "This is the binding dust," he explained, his voice reverent. "Made from the bones of the first spirits, mixed with the blood of those who chose to bridge the worlds. Once you are marked with this, you will carry a piece of the wild lands within you forever." Angel watched as the elder sprinkled the powder over Brutus first. The massive dog stood perfectly still as the red dust settled into his coat, and Angel gasped as he saw the change. Brutus's eyes began to glow with a faint golden light, and when he breathed, wisps of the red powder seemed to flow from his nostrils like smoke. León was next. The white Dogo Argentino's broken ribs knitted together as the powder touched his fur, his wounds closing with visible speed. But more than physical healing was happening. León's silence took on a quality of ancient wisdom, as if he now understood secrets that no domestic animal should possess. Nero's transformation was the most dramatic. The intelligent Cane Corso's already keen awareness expanded exponentially. His eyes began to track things that weren't visible to Angel, his head tilting as if he could hear conversations in languages that existed before humans learned to speak. Then it was Angel's turn. The powder hit his skin like liquid fire. Pain exploded through every nerve in his body, but it wasn't the sharp agony of injury. It was the burning sensation of fundamental change at the cellular level. He felt his DNA rewriting itself, felt connections forming between his consciousness and the living spirit of the land itself. Through the pain, he became aware of things he'd never noticed before. He could feel the heartbeat of every animal within a mile radius. He could sense the flow of underground water, the whisper of wind through grass, the slow conversation of trees as they shared nutrients through their root networks. But most importantly, he could feel Clara. His daughter's life force was burning like a candle in a hurricane, her spiritual energy nearly exhausted from calming the pack. But now, with his new connection to the land's power, Angel could share his strength with her. The moment he opened that connection, Clara's song grew stronger. Color returned to her cheeks, steadiness to her voice. She was drawing power from him now, from his love for her made manifest through mystical bonds that transcended the physical world. The pack leader approached Angel, its massive head now level with his own. This close, Angel could see that the creature's scars weren't just from battles. They were ritual markings, sacred symbols that told the story of its role as guardian of ancient secrets. "You are bound now," it said, its telepathic voice carrying notes of approval. The child's gift is shared among you all. She will no longer bear the burden alone. Ángel felt it immediately, the terrible weight that Clara had been carrying for weeks, the spiritual pressure of bridging two incompatible worlds. Now that load was distributed among him and his 3 dogs, making it manageable, survivable. Clara's song reached its crescendo and then gently faded into silence. But instead of collapsing from exhaustion, she walked calmly to Ángel and threw her arms around his waist. "Papa," she whispered, and her voice was purely human again. "I knew you'd find me." Ángel held his daughter close, feeling through their new bond that she was truly safe for the first time in weeks. The pack was withdrawing into the forest, their hunger satisfied not by flesh but by the spiritual nourishment Clara's music had provided. But their ordeal wasn't over yet. The old man approached them, his weathered face grave with concern. "The binding ritual has been completed, but it has also sent ripples through the spirit world. Other creatures will sense what has happened here. Some will be curious, others will be hungry for the power you now carry." As if summoned by his words, new sounds began to emerge from the deeper darkness of the forest. Not the organized hunting calls of the pack they'd just faced, but something chaotic and desperate, the cries of creatures driven mad by spiritual starvation. Beings that had been cut off from the land's power for so long, they'd become twisted mockeries of their original forms. How many? Ángel asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. The old man closed his eyes and seemed to listen to voices only he could hear. When he opened them again, his expression was haunted. "All of them," he said simply. "Every broken spirit, every hungry ghost, every creature that has been denied the connection you now share. They're coming from across the continent, drawn by the scent of the power that flows through you and your daughter." Ángel felt his 3 dogs press closer to his sides, their newly enhanced senses no doubt picking up threats that his merely human awareness couldn't detect yet. Even with their supernatural upgrades, they were still vastly outnumbered by whatever was approaching. "How long do we have?" Ángel asked. "Until the moon reaches its peak," the old man replied, glancing at the silver orb that was climbing toward its zenith. "Perhaps an hour. 1 hour to prepare for a battle against every spiritual abomination on the African continent. 1 hour to protect his daughter and his dogs from creatures that existed beyond the boundaries of natural law." Ángel looked at Clara, still holding him tight, trusting him completely to keep her safe. He looked at Brutus, León, and Nero, their eyes now glowing with otherworldly power, but their loyalty absolutely unchanged. 1 hour to become the protector his family needed him to be. "Then we'd better get ready," Ángel said. The final battle was about to begin. The attack began with silence, not the comfortable quiet of a peaceful night, but the oppressive absence of sound that comes when every natural creature flees in terror. Even the insects stopped chirping. Even the wind held its breath. Ángel and his family, because that's what they were now, bonded by magic deeper than blood, took positions around the village's central fire. The flames had been fed with special herbs that the old man claimed would reveal their enemies' true forms. But Ángel wasn't sure he wanted to see what was coming for them. Clara sat in the center of their defensive circle, not because she needed protection, but because she had become their spiritual anchor. Through their mystical connection, Ángel could feel her drawing power from the earth itself, channeling it through their bond to strengthen him and his 3 dogs. Brutus had positioned himself facing the main path into the village, his massive frame even more imposing now that supernatural strength flowed through his muscles. His eyes swept the darkness with mechanical precision, cataloging threats that normal senses couldn't detect. León guarded their left flank, his white coat practically glowing in the moonlight. The Dogo Argentino's legendary silence had become something almost sacred. He moved without disturbing so much as a pebble, ready to strike at threats before they knew he was there. Nero took the right side. His intelligence expanded to tactical genius levels by their spiritual transformation. Ángel could actually feel the Cane Corso's mind working, calculating angles of attack, predicting enemy movements, formulating strategies that would maximize their chances of survival. The villagers had retreated to their homes and barred their doors. But Ángel knew that wouldn't save them if this defensive line failed. Whatever was coming wouldn't distinguish between the magically bonded and the merely human. The first attack came from above. Creatures that might once have been birds dove from the star-filled sky, their wings torn and rotting, their eyes burning with the malevolent hunger of things that had been denied peace for too long. They moved in formation like a military squadron, their tattered flight feathers whistling as they cut through the air. León was the first to react. The white dog launched himself skyward with supernatural agility, his jaws snapping shut on the lead creature's neck. Both dog and monster crashed to the ground in a tangle of fur and feathers, but León rolled to his feet immediately. Ready for the next attacker, Brutus caught two of the aerial horrors in mid-dive, his massive paws swatting them from the sky like oversized insects. But there were dozens more, and they kept coming. Ángel drew the machete he'd carried across 2 continents, feeling the blade hum with power as it connected to the spiritual energy flowing through his transformed body. When he struck at the dive-bombing creatures, the steel cut through supernatural flesh like it was made of moonbeams and shadow. But the aerial assault was just a distraction. The real threat came from the ground. They emerged from the forest like a tide of nightmares made manifest. Creatures that defied every law of biology and physics. Beings that looked like animals if animals could be turned inside out and reassembled by a madman with a hatred for the natural order. Some walked on too many legs. Others had faces in places where faces shouldn't exist. A few seemed to be made entirely of shadow and malice, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid darkness given predatory intent, but all of them shared the same terrible hunger, the desperate need to consume the spiritual power that Ángel and his family now carried. "Stay together!" Ángel shouted, though he knew his dogs could hear his thoughts through their mystical bond. "Protect Clara!" The battle that followed was like nothing in recorded history. Ángel moved with speed and strength that his human body shouldn't have been capable of. His machete cutting arcs of silver light through the air as he fought creatures that bled shadow and screamed in frequencies that made the earth itself tremble. Brutus became a force of nature, his powerful jaws and supernatural strength allowing him to tear through attackers that should have been beyond any mortal dog's ability to harm. When he roared his challenge, the sound carried harmonics of the earth's own voice, causing some of the weaker spirits to flee in terror. León fought with the precision of a master swordsman, every movement economical and deadly. His enhanced speed let him strike and fade, leaving behind enemies that collapsed without understanding what had killed them. Nero coordinated their defense with tactical brilliance that would have impressed military generals. Through their psychic link, he fed Ángel and the other dogs real-time information about enemy movements, weak points in their line, opportunities for devastating counterattacks, and Clara sang, not the desperate, exhausting song from before, but a melody of power and protection that wove through the battle like golden thread through black fabric. Her voice gave them strength when their limbs grew tired, healed their wounds when claws found their mark, and most importantly, kept the spiritual connection stable that allowed them to fight as more than the sum of their parts. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Ángel lost count of how many supernatural horrors he cut down, how many impossible creatures his dogs destroyed. His world narrowed to the rhythm of combat: strike, dodge, protect Clara, strike again. But slowly, gradually, the tide began to turn. Not because they were winning, there seemed to be an endless supply of hungry spirits, but because something else was happening. Each creature they destroyed didn't just die. It was transformed, its twisted spiritual energy purified by contact with the power flowing through Ángel's family. Instead of adding to the chaotic hunger that drove the attack, the destroyed spirits became part of the healing force that protected the village. Clara's song was teaching them how to transform destruction into redemption, how to turn the battle itself into a massive ritual of spiritual cleansing. The attacking creatures began to sense the change. Their coordinated assault became hesitant, then confused, then actively fearful. They had come expecting to feast on stolen power, but instead they were being offered healing they'd forgotten how to accept. Some of the less corrupted spirits actually stopped fighting. Ángel watched in amazement as creatures that had been trying to kill him moments before began to glow with soft light, their twisted forms straightening and healing until they resembled the natural animals they'd once been. The transformation was spreading. What had started as a desperate last stand was becoming something unprecedented, a mass healing of spiritual wounds that had festered for generations. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the last of the attacking spirits either fled or submitted to Clara's healing song. The village was littered with the remains of supernatural battle, but also with something Ángel had never expected to see: creatures of pure light, beings that had been cleansed of their hunger and restored to their original forms. Some were recognizable as animals: lions with manes of starlight, elephants whose tusks gleamed like ivory carved from captured moonbeams. Others were purely spiritual entities, beings of such beauty that Ángel had to look away to keep from being overwhelmed by their radiance, but all of them bowed to Clara before departing. His 12-year-old daughter, who just weeks ago had been worried about math homework and playground politics, had become a figure of reverence to creatures older than human civilization. The old man approached them as the last of the purified spirits faded into the morning light. His weathered face was streaked with tears of joy and wonder. "In all my years as keeper of the old ways," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I have never seen anything like this." The child didn't just protect the village. She healed wounds in the spiritual fabric of the world itself. Ángel looked at Clara, who was finally showing signs of exhaustion but was smiling with quiet satisfaction. "How do you feel, Mia?" "Different," she admitted, "but not in a bad way. I can still hear the land talking, but it's not so loud anymore. And I can feel you and the boys all the time now, even when you're far away." Ángel tested their connection and found it was true. He was aware of Clara's emotional state, her physical condition, even her location, as clearly as if she were standing next to him. The same bond extended to his 3 dogs, creating a family unit that was more unified than any group of individuals had a right to be. Brutus, León and Nero had gathered around Clara, their supernatural transformation having enhanced their protective instincts to an almost religious level. They would die before they let any harm come to her, but more than that, they now had the power to actually prevent most threats from ever reaching her. "What happens now?" Ángel asked the old man. "Can we go home?" The elder considered this question carefully. "You can return to Spain," he said finally, "but home will be different for you now. You carry a piece of this land within you, and it carries a piece of you. You will find that animals trust you immediately, that plants grow stronger in your presence, that you can sense the spiritual health of any place you visit. And Clara, the child's gift is rarer and more powerful. She will need to learn to control it, to channel it safely. But yes, she can return to the world of schools and homework and ordinary childhood concerns. The land's hold on her is strong, but her father's love is stronger." Ángel felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. Clara could come home. His daughter could have a normal life, or as normal as possible for a girl who could talk to spiritual entities and heal supernatural wounds with a lullaby. "There is one more thing," the old man added. "The connection you now share makes you a family in ways that transcend blood or law. If any of you are ever in mortal danger, the others will know instantly, no matter how far apart you are. You will be able to lend each other strength across any distance." Ángel looked at his dogs, his sons really, and at Clara, his daughter, who was now so much more than just his daughter. They were bound together by magic and love in equal measure, a family unit that could never be truly separated. "When can we leave?" Clara asked, and Ángel heard the homesickness in her voice, despite everything she'd experienced. "The authorities will send a helicopter," the old man promised. "I sent word through the spirit paths that you were safe. Your government will be very relieved to have you back, As if summoned by his words, the sound of rotor blades began to echo across the savanna. A rescue helicopter appeared on the horizon, approaching the village with the urgency of a long overdue miracle. Ángel gathered his daughter and his dogs, preparing for the journey home. But as the helicopter landed and uniformed officials rushed toward them, he realized that the most important part of their adventure was just beginning. They would have to learn how to live in the modern world while carrying ancient magic in their hearts. They would have to protect Clara's secret while helping her develop her incredible gift. And they would have to find ways to use their supernatural bond to make the world a little bit better, a little bit more connected to the spiritual forces that most people had forgotten even existed. The rescue was complete. But the real story was just beginning. The construction site in Seville looked the same as it always had, but Ángel Martinez was not the same man who had left Spain in desperate pursuit of his missing daughter. As he supervised the installation of steel beams for a new apartment building, his workers noticed that accidents had become virtually non-existent. Equipment that should have malfunctioned ran smoothly. Workers who should have been injured by falling debris somehow always stepped aside at exactly the right moment. They didn't know that Ángel could sense structural weakness before it became visible, or that his connection to the natural world let him predict weather changes hours before they appeared on any forecast. They just knew that working for Ángel Martinez had become the safest job in construction. Clara had returned to school, but her teachers were amazed by the change in her. The shy girl who had struggled with confidence was now a natural leader, someone other children gravitated toward when they needed comfort or guidance. Her grades improved dramatically, not because the subjects had become easier, but because her enhanced awareness let her understand the connections between different areas of knowledge in ways that impressed even her professors. She still kept a diary, but now she wrote in it every night, recording not just her daily experiences, but also the dreams that came to her, visions of places she'd never been, of animals that needed help, of environmental problems that could be solved if only the right people paid attention at the right time. The 3 dogs had adapted to domestic life with surprising ease. Brutus still looked like a massive predator, but children approached him without fear, sensing the protective gentleness that his supernatural transformation had enhanced. León remained silent, but had become almost telepathic in his communication with the family, somehow always knowing what each of them needed before they asked for it. Nero's intelligence had expanded to the point where Ángel sometimes wondered if the dog understood human conversation better than most humans did. But the most remarkable change was in the bond they all shared. Ángel could be at a construction site across the city and instantly know if Clara was having trouble with homework. Clara could be in class and sense when one of the dogs was feeling unwell. The dogs could communicate complex ideas to each other and to their human family members without making a sound. They had become something unprecedented in the modern world, a truly unified family unit, bound together by love that had been transformed into something approaching magic. The Spanish authorities had asked remarkably few questions about Clara's rescue. The official story was that she had been found by local villagers after becoming separated from her tour group, and that Ángel had traveled to Africa to bring her home personally. No mention was made of supernatural creatures, mystical bonds, or battles against spiritual entities that defied classification. But sometimes, late at night, Ángel would catch Clara standing by her bedroom window, humming her mother's lullaby while staring out at the stars. When he asked what she was thinking about, she would smile and say, "Just checking on some friends." He knew she was maintaining some kind of connection to the spiritual realm they'd encountered in Zimbabwe. Part of him worried about that, but a larger part was proud. His daughter had been chosen for something extraordinary, and she was handling that responsibility with grace and wisdom beyond her years. As Ángel finished his work for the day and headed home to his family, all of his family, he reflected on the lessons their journey had taught him. Love really is stronger than fear. When Clara disappeared, Angel could have been paralyzed by terror, could have trusted the system to handle everything, could have waited helplessly while bureaucrats and professionals did their jobs. Instead, he chose to act, to risk everything on the slim chance that a father's determination could accomplish what official channels could not. Family isn't just about blood. Brutus, León, and Nero weren't just pets who had accompanied Angel on his quest. They were family members who had fought beside him, suffered with him, and shared in a transformation that bound them together more completely than any legal adoption ever could. The love between a man and his dogs had proven to be just as powerful as the love between a father and his daughter. There are forces in this world that science hasn't catalogued yet, connections that rationality can't explain. And sometimes the impossible is just the inevitable wearing a disguise. Angel had always been a practical man, someone who trusted in concrete and steel and things he could measure with his hands. But his journey to find Clara had shown him that the most important things in life, love, loyalty, hope, faith, can't be quantified or controlled, only experienced and trusted. And finally, he had learned that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things when they're fighting for something worth saving. He wasn't a hero or a warrior or anyone special. He was just a father who refused to give up on his daughter, supported by 3 dogs who refused to give up on him. Together, they had accomplished something that would live on in the spiritual memory of an entire continent. The rescue was complete. Clara was home, safe and stronger than she'd ever been. The dogs were healthy and happy, and more bonded to their human family than ever before. And Angel had his daughter back, along with a connection to mystery and magic that would enrich the rest of his life. But more than that, they had proven something important about the power of love to transform impossible situations into miraculous outcomes. As Angel opened the door to his home and heard Clara's laughter mixing with the happy sounds of 3 dogs who were clearly delighted to see him, he realized that their story wasn't really over. It was just beginning. Clara's gift would continue to develop, and she would need guidance as she learned to balance her connection to the spiritual world with the demands of growing up in the modern era. The dogs would continue to serve as protectors and companions, but their enhanced abilities would also make them valuable allies in situations that normal animals couldn't handle. And Angel himself would have to learn what it meant to be the father of a daughter who could heal ancient wounds and speak with entities older than recorded history. Their adventure in Africa had been the crucible that forged their family bonds, but the real test would be in the years to come, learning how to use their extraordinary connection to make ordinary life more meaningful, more connected, more infused with the kind of love that can literally work miracles. The research was complete. The legacy had been established. Love had conquered fear, family had overcome impossible odds, and hope had proved stronger than despair. And somewhere in the wilderness of Zimbabwe, in a village that doesn't appear on any map, an old man occasionally looks toward the horizon and smiles, knowing that the bonds he helped forge are making the world a better place. One day at a time, this story proves that there are no ordinary families, only families who haven't yet discovered the extraordinary lengths they'll go to for each other. If this journey of love, sacrifice, and supernatural courage moved you, I want you to do something important. First, hit that subscribe button for Wind Echo Untold, because stories like this one, stories that show the incredible power of human determination, deserve to be shared with everyone who needs to. Remember that miracles are real when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. Then, in the comments below, tell me about your own family, the people or animals who would walk through fire for you, who make you stronger just by being in your life. Because Clara and Angel's story isn't unique. It's universal. We all have the capacity for this kind of love, this kind of courage, this kind of unbreakable bond. And finally, share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that no distance is too far, no obstacle too great when love is driving the journey. Because in a world that often tells us we're powerless, stories like this prove that ordinary people with extraordinary love can literally work miracles. The research continues. The legacy grows, and somewhere out there, another father or mother or family is about to discover just how powerful love can be when it refuses to give up. Thank you for taking this journey with Angel. Clara, Brutus, León, and Nero. Their story is proof that some bonds are stronger than death itself, and that heroes aren't born. They're forged in the crucible of impossible love, facing insurmountable odds. Until the next story. Remember, you are more powerful than you know. Your love is stronger than any force that opposes it. And there is no distance too great to travel for the people who matter most. This is Wind Echo Untold, where the impossible becomes inevitable, and love always finds a way.